For our next question, there's several questions about social issues that school boards across the country have been tackling, talking about how comprehensive historical education should be approached, especially when it comes to Black history, and also issues about LGBTQ and gender identity. What role do you think our schools should play in addressing these issues, and how should parents be notified?
That's a whole bunch to bite off in one question here. But I think what we have to do is we have to look at what our curriculum looks like. And so many times there's a snippet pulled out of context, out of a piece of information that goes out, and all of a sudden one snippet becomes the viral conversation. And whichever side of the issue you're on, all of a sudden we take that position as our in granite position. So I think we have to take a look at our professional staff, take a look at what is contained in the curriculum, and have the total picture before we start going to just snippets. And I think too often in today's viral media world, we are led by snippets of conversation rather than the whole picture of conversation. So from my perspective, I think we have to vote our own conscience, but we also have to rely on our professional staff in the school system to make recommendations for the board to consider. And that's so important in our school system. We've had school boards and board members in the past who have thought they needed to go in every day and sit side by side with the superintendent and run the school district. And that's simply not good governance. Good governance means hiring an executive and expecting that executive to do the job. And that covers this topic as well.
I think that it's good for everybody to know complete history, whether it be Black history, LGBTQ, whatever. But I also think that if we're going to teach children history that may be contradictory to their parents' beliefs or whatever, the parents should be notified in writing and have to sign something saying that they're okay with you teaching their child that at that particular time. And we have to make sure that when we do teach this, that the teachers are very well prepared so that they don't misconstrue a child into thinking, anything that they're saying can be taken out of context or racist, because history, we wouldn't want a child to think that a teacher is talking about the LGBT community and she's racist because she's talking about that. So we have to make sure that if we're going to teach that, the teachers are educated on how to present it so it doesn't sound like they're downgrading one part of the history over another part.
This is a very important question, but first I would say that school districts need to follow the law around whatever the subject is. I think that that's really important. Doesn't matter if it's LGBT or it's Black history. I think that that's really important to make sure that we are actually following the law and state statutes that are surrounding that information. The other thing I'll say is this is one of those questions that sometimes divide people. But right now I'm worried about making sure our kids can read first. So it doesn't matter if you're teaching them Black history or anything else. If they can't read, it's a moot point. So let's make sure our kids can read. That's what I think is very important. So the other thing I'll say is one of our opponents brought up something about good governance, and we only have one employee that we hire, which is the superintendent. But when we cherry pick superintendents to carry out what our agenda and everything else is, then that too is something that we also need to be addressing as not so good board governance and something that more so lacks accountability. And we've seen that here a few times. So, and it's not necessarily that we want to hold the superintendent's hand, but we want to make sure that they're not also complicit in helping to break the Open Meetings Act 16 times. So I just want to kind of put that in there, and I'm done. Here you go.
I'm very sensitive about what our children are being taught, especially about sex. sexuality to me is an age-appropriate type of subject. In other words, I want to protect the innocence of our first, second, third-year-old kids, our first, second, third grade kids. I don't feel it's appropriate for them to be immersed into the LBGTQ agenda, the ideologies that go with it. Innocence only lasts for a short period of time. And I want to give our children the ability to be innocent for as long as possible. And someone asked me a while ago about what I would do about banning books that I thought were objectionable. And I said, I don't believe in banning books, but I believe in books being age appropriate for the audience. So I don't want a third grader reading about two men having sex together. I don't want them reading about two women having sex together. It's inappropriate. If we found it appropriate at 7th, 8th, 9th grade, fine. But I want to protect the young children from things that are coming out of Springfield that I find abhorrent. There are laws that I object to, and I strongly fall on the side of protecting the kids.
So, to echo Mr. Jenkins' point, first and foremost, we have to comply with the law. That's, Illinois State Board of Education sets what curriculum should, sets outlines for curriculum, and then when it comes to actually implementation, that goes to school administration. And so our job as a school board is to hire administrators and allow them the latitude to choose a curriculum based on feedback from our teachers, from our teaching professionals, and from the Illinois State Board of Education in order to come up with the best curriculum possible for our children. And again, not to echo Mr. Jenkins again, it comes down to we need to focus on where our issues are, which is reading, math, and writing. That's where we need to focus. When we have only 70% of our children graduating from high school, that shows that we are not preparing them for life, and that needs to be our focus. Thank you.
I was gonna sneeze, sorry. So one of the reasons we teach history is so that it doesn't repeat itself. So I think we need to be brutally honest about what that history is at an age-appropriate level. Whitewashing it isn't going to help any of us. It's not going to help any of our kids or the next generations. Our job is to prepare kids for the real world. We can't hide certain things. And I mean, if Jim has two dads, then Jim has two dads, and that's just what reality is, and not something that is age-appropriate or not. And you know, I think just teaching a nuclear family and that things happen a certain way is a dangerous area to get into, but I think we really need to just teach our kids the truth and set them up for the real world.